Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here, back with another video, and today I am presenting to you my Starkiller base finished mock. This has been quite the ordeal. This has been a journey. This has probably been the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. This is a build that I've been working on for over 2.5 years. The moment I saw The Force Awakens, I instantly knew I wanted to recreate the Starkiller base sequence, pretty much everything from Starkiller base, and that's essentially what you'll see illustrated throughout this mock. We're here at Brick Rodeo right now. We finally have the mock set up. This is the only time that I've seen this mock together. It is massive. There is literally no way for me to keep this build in one place in my home. So I'm trying to soak it all in. I'm trying to enjoy it, and I'm hoping you guys are gonna enjoy it with me. The first thing I want to highlight with this build is, of course, the main Hux speech area. This is probably one of the most exciting things for me to build with this mock because it's really like no other scene in Star Wars. A lot of people in the LEGO community know just how valuable army building can be, and it's not too often you get to basically army build and show off your army in a mock. So that's what I wanted to do here. We got a variety of First Order troops lined up here, listening to Hux honestly have an aneurysm on the stage. Hope he's gonna be okay. But yeah, we got the Hux speech going on here. This is a culmination of, I believe, around 400 minifigures. It might actually be a little bit more. The most difficult parts about making this come together was honestly acquiring the minifigures. I sourced a lot of my figures through battle packs and really just buying every set that came with Stormtroopers, sometimes multiple sets that came with Stormtroopers, and ultimately that led me here. And of course, I can't say that it wasn't without a little help. I got a shout out to my boy Garrett Briggs. He did loan me quite a few figures for this display, but I'm not trying to flex, but I mean, these are mostly my figures. You know, my First Order army is pretty nice. You'll notice that the army is lined by 2 rows of custom ships. That's one thing that I try to always do on my mock. If there's a mock of a custom vehicle, even if it's not necessarily something that I design, I want to make sure that I have the best detail when it comes to the vehicles in my build. So lining the mock, we have 6 First Order TIE fighters. We have a Special Forces variant right here in the back in case some rebels want to sneak up. These are made by Jarek. If you want to purchase those instructions, those are available out there. He is a wonderful designer, and I really think that his clean, sleek TIE fighter design really helped just improve the mock that much more. And of course, I have to mention my First Order transporter right over here in the front of the build. This is around 2,000 pieces. I spent a lot of time trying to construct this build specifically for this mock. One of my goals with this mock was, or with any mock that I do, is always to incorporate some sort of custom vehicle build on my own. I feel that's kind of what I've become known for. If we take a look at it, you can see that it's fully snot all the way around. One of the things I'm most proud of is the bottom on this ship. You can see there's some pretty nice snot work going all the way around there. Got the landing gears as well. It's pretty good to go, I think. So now we make our way up to the stage. One of the things that I wanted to highlight with this build was accuracy. I spent a painstaking amount of time trying to make sure that the correct troops were in the correct place, the officers behind Hux were the correct officers, wearing the correct gear, standing in the correct places, and I think it worked out pretty well. Anytime I do builds like these, I always want to recreate exactly what you see on film, and I think I've done that as faithfully as I could here on this mock. You'll notice right behind Hux, we have these 3 giant banners. This is a First Order insignia. A lot of people suggested for me to brick build this, but I really wanted that smooth, clean, sleek look. So this is a custom decal that I had made, and I think it came out amazingly. One of the most difficult parts about this was actually trying to split it into 3. The sticker didn't come that way. I actually had to cut through it, and it came out pretty well. And this is one of those things that were just super stressful, because if this didn't work out, if that sticker was misaligned even just a little bit, people would have noticed, and that would have bugged me. Alongside the stickers, we have our turbo lasers. This is a massive build. You'll notice throughout this video, there are many massive builds, and this turbo laser is no different. You can actually rotate a little bit here. It's not 360, but it's enough to get the job done. It's enough to get the job done. And this thing took forever to build. It's probably a 1,000 to 2,000 build in itself, and there's two of them on either side. If you've built a Lego set, you know there's a kind of annoyance about having repetition, and when you have to repeat big assemblies multiple times, which I had to do all throughout this build, you might find yourself getting a little tired. But, you know, I tried my best to make sure that throughout the build, I was trying to incorporate as much detail as possible. So you'll even see the greebling on this side is pretty unique. It's actually not even the exact greebling on the other one. I tried to have a little bit of variation across the two, something that you won't notice unless you look really close, but always in my builds I tried to incorporate things that will make people look a little bit closer. It's not just a big build, but you'll always notice something different if you care to take a closer look. So as we make our way back towards this section, you'll see we have a little interior room right here. Up top, we have this hallway with Mickey Mouse celebrating. Just bought Star Wars. He just cashed out. He's feeling pretty good about himself. Down below, we have the trash compactor room. And you'll notice a lot of familiar faces in there, namely Captain Phasma. She's in the trash compactor. How about that? You'll also notice our fallen soldier here, Bulio, gone but not forgotten. Let's make our way back to the hangar section. This is a super important part of the build. It's a pretty short scene in the movie, but I thought it was just so visually impressive, and I knew it would make for an awesome looking Lego build. We have the Special Forces First Order TIE Fighter parked right here with a bunch of First Order personnel scattered across the platform. We got some of our troops over here on the consoles. And then one of the things that I take the most pride in this section of the build are these slanted walls right here. It's kind of similar to the Death Star wall pattern. It's a little bit different. It's had the First Order kind of threw their own flavor to it. But this was such a feat to try to design. When you have this large wall that slants inward, you know, there's so many concerns about weight, so many concerns about angling, so many concerns about stability, but I think it came out really well. And when you take a step back and you see these large hangar walls lining the TIE Fighter in the middle, I think it just looks so close to what you see in the film. One of the nicest things about this mock, though, is like I said earlier, if you keep looking, you're always going to notice something new. We have a familiar face hanging off the side of the wall. We got Rey Skywalker. I'm sorry, I mean just Rey. Don't want to offend anybody. She is making her way through Starkiller base. Of course, you'll notice she is running from the First Order. She's trying to hide from all the stormtroopers that might be chasing her. So went ahead and threw that figure back there. That's honestly one of my favorite scenes from the Force Awakens. So it was really fun to incorporate that. And you'll also notice that on the opposite side of the hallway, it does still have some just First Order guys making their way about the base. Next up, we have one of my favorite rooms in the build. This is the Hux Command Center room. So in The Force Awakens, Hux is overlooking the battle, and then he has some troops come in and they tell him, hey, what do we need to do? And I believe he says something along the lines of scramble our fighters. This room was such a joy to make. One of the things that I didn't really get to appreciate about this room is just the views you have out of the window, but I knew at one point I would. I specifically placed this room in this mock to allow you to essentially look into the room and then out the window and see the world that this mock is in through the eyes of a minifigure, and I think it came out so well. One of the most important things to me about this room was to basically recreate the scene where Hux is overlooking the battle, and if you look through this window, you can see all of the fighters flying about the base, and it just looks incredible. It is truly amazing. One of the other cool things about this room is if you actually take a closer look in the floor, there are lights in the floor. Unfortunately, I realized just recently you won't notice it unless you're pretty tall, but hey, I can see it, and that's all that matters. Making our way over to the outside of the base, you can see that it is lined by this giant wall. This was quite the feat to accomplish. One of the most difficult things to try to do with this mock was consider the elevation. I knew that I wanted to incorporate a trench, and that basically meant that everything else was going to have to be elevated. So you can see this wall right here, it's about a foot off of the table, and we have the First Order building just lined with windows going across here. And this isn't just something that came out of my mind. If you freeze on a certain frame in The Force Awakens, you'll notice this is actually part of Starkiller base. It's these little details that I think really sets this mock apart. This wasn't just me creating Starkiller Base from my head. This was me trying to reimagine Starkiller Base as best as possible, as accurately as possible in a LEGO setting. You can see right here we have a dogfighter chase. We have one of Enther's T-70 X-Wing starfighters being trailed by a TIE fighter. And I really love the placement of these two vehicles. I think it looks incredible. The angles look awesome. The custom builds look awesome. I'm super proud of that. Back along the other side, you can see we have a scene from a deleted scene in The Force Awakens. There's Rey and Finn being trailed by two snowtroopers and a couple of First Order snowspeeders. Now here comes the part of the mock that caused so many problems. If this wasn't in the mock, I promise you I would have saved so much money. But the trench is the reason this entire section of the mock is elevated by at least a foot. But looking at it here, seeing how it leads up to the oscillator building, I think it was definitely worth it. Inside of the trench, you can see we have Poe Dameron making his way to the oscillator building. He's trying to blow up Starkiller Base. One of the things I love the most about this trench section are these dark red accent colors. These pipes that line the trenches really helped give this mock just a touch of color, which is not something you see too often in Star Wars. And that was really nice. I like also how this is in a way analogous to the front half of the mock, where it's a pretty gray and white platform, but you do have that hint of red in the flag. Here, you have the hint of dark red with the pipes that line the trench section. I gotta highlight this building right here. This building was such a joy to build when I initially constructed it. It's one of those things that you wouldn't notice in the trench run because they really skim past it pretty quickly. But once I was, going through the movie, pausing it, I noticed that's gonna work. That's gonna look really nice in LEGO. So I'm really happy I was able to get that built. You'll notice back towards the left-hand side of the trench, we have a turbo laser, a small one that is actually manned by a First Order stormtrooper, and I think that also came out well. I really wanted to make sure the angles came flushly together, so I use a lot of panel technique to get a nice smooth finish around here, and I love the way that came out. You'll notice that I kind of continued that same design philosophy up to the oscillator building, which, looking at it now, is just absolutely massive. If this building was just sitting by itself, it'd be huge, but the fact that it is elevated by a foot just makes it look so impressive. I tried my best to incorporate a lot of snow detailing across it. If you look at some reference images of this oscillator building, you'll see a lot of the patterns of the snow match what you see in the film. And the size of this thing was super important because the trench leads right up to it. The ships are leading right up to it. If I undersized it even by a little bit, it would have been very noticeable and it would have thrown the whole mock off. So capturing the size of this thing was super important, and I think that I did that pretty effectively. On this side of the build, we have more interior rooms. You'll see we have Palpatine and his cloning facility. Yes, this man is cooking up Snokes. Shout out to Grogu. Next up, we have probably my favorite section of this build. This is the prisoner section. If you played Star Wars Battlefront, you'll notice that this is pretty familiar. And it was such a joy to build. This is a very interesting part of the build, especially with the red vents, the lights poking through those, the main command center in the middle, like the watchtower. And then, of course, we have some bad rebels locked away in the background. You'll also notice there's a quite valuable rebel chilling back there as well. And then lining the outsides of the build, we have even more rebel cells. And this was just so fun to incorporate. If you play Battlefront 2, you'll notice a bunch of rebels just standing there idly. So just having these guys miserable in here really gave me a laugh. If we move down below, you'll see we have one of the cool sections of the mock. This is the cafeteria. I really didn't intend for this room to be so dim. I just ended up in a position where I couldn't incorporate too many lights, but I do think it works for this mock. I think that this room has a certain vibe that's different than anything else. You start at a prison upstairs, but then you come down here and people are having a nice, swell conversation. That's what I like to see. If you look towards the middle of the build, you'll notice two very important things. Number one, this guy right here, he's not suspicious at all. No reason to pay him any close attention. He's just a normal, everyday food cook. But if you look down below in these vents right here, you'll see I illuminated them with that orange color, and that really looks awesome to me. I think that came out so well. This was actually inspired by the cafeteria in the First Order Star Destroyer in the Battlefront game, but I thought it was pretty fitting to put it here in Starkiller Base. If you also look around the mock, you'll notice some other familiar faces in the cafeteria, enjoying a good old time. Now let's move down to what I'd say is probably one of the more impressive rooms in this mock. We have the Snoke hologram room, the Snoke throne room, and this thing just came out so well. This is just, I think, one of the most interesting parts of the build. One, you have this giant figure of Snoke that looks absolutely terrifying. You know, I tried my best to make him look as handsome as possible, but I'm sorry, Snoke, you might need to develop a good personality because them looks ain't taking you too far, buddy. Anyways, this room, I think, came out incredibly. Battlefront 2 was a huge source of reference material for this. And one thing I love about this room is the rings that kind of go around the bottom. So obviously Snoke, he's on his circular platform. There's a second ring that goes around, and then the walls around them form a third ring. And there's a lot of interesting use of lights. The one that I wanted to point you guys out to is if you actually look down underneath it, there's a light shining down on Snoke. That is his hologram light. I wanted to make sure to incorporate that. Next up, we have the barracks. This was such a fun part of the mock to incorporate. We have a lot of funny scenes going on here. The top left side, we got some dudes shooting hoops, going from the three like Steph Curry. Over to the right, we got some dudes pumping iron. You can see that I incorporated some of those mirror pieces, and I thought that was just such a cool inclusion of the mock. I love the fact that you can look in this and actually see the guy's reflection. And then down below, you'll see we have some beds here. These were pretty heavily inspired by the Camino barracks that you'll see in those episodes in the Clone Wars. And I think it came out well. I think this is a nice alternative to it with some First Order flavor. Let's move down below. We have the interrogation room. Rey is locked up. She's using the Jedi mind tricks. I don't see anything wrong with that. Do y'all see anything wrong with that? No, she's just powerful. Nothing wrong with that. If we move over to the left side, we have some stormtroopers walking through. Oh, no, we gotta stop. Let's take another way. Kylo Ren's having another temper tantrum. And then we move our way to the last set of interior rooms. You can see the bathroom. It's having a rough time. We have some mishaps going on there. The toilet has exploded. Water is everywhere. Everything is in chaos. I don't know what to tell you guys. It's just messed up in there, guys. Down below, we have the shield room. Finn is pointing his gun at Phasma. He is telling her to let down the shields. This is a fun room to incorporate, and it's a recognizable room, so that one meant a lot to me. Over to the left, we have probably the most iconic hallway in all of Starkiller base. I kid you not, they use this hallway like 3 or 4 different times in the movie. Check it, I checked. And one thing I have to highlight, we have the Jar Jar janitor from the Bombad Bounty. That's probably the most valuable figure in my collection now. But wait, there's more. Here we have the oscillator building. This is such a massive building from the outside, but on the inside, I feel I really tried to pack in as much detail as possible. We have 3 levels of catwalks here. We have Chewbacca overlooking the meeting between Han Solo and Kylo Ren. And then up top, we have Rey and Finn overlooking that same meeting. One of the nice things you'll notice if you look closely is there are actually thermal detonators scattered across these catwalks to basically match what Han and Chewie were trying to do by way of blowing up this building. And also, we have what is probably the most, hold on, I gotta take a break. This is just too depressing. I can't talk about this. All right, we're back. Here we have the unfaithful meeting between Kylo Ren and his father, Han Solo. He is stabbing him right in the gut. What a monster. But don't worry, we got the cleanup crew down here to make sure Han Solo gets to where he needs to be. Look at that guy. It doesn't seem too bad down there. And then finally, outside the oscillator building, our heroes are trying to make their escape from Starkiller base, and they are confronted by Kylo Ren. I love the fact that this was basically one of the last parts that I built on this mock, because this is one of the first things I planned. Whenever I first started working on this mock, I bought these light-up lightsabers, and I was like, I want to use these someday. And I didn't know that day would be the very last day I saw the mock, but I think it came out excellently. I'd have some tree builds here going all across. I tried to make a pretty a foresty, Starkiller-based looking forest. I used some dark green leaves, some white leaves as well, and I'm very happy with the way this came out. One other cool thing about this is we have a tree that has fallen in the forest. If you'll notice during the fight, these guys actually knocked down quite a few trees, so it was very important to capture that detail. I'd like to thank all the people who made this happen. This convention was so hectic. It was crazy in every which way, but I had a lot of good friends that helped make this possible. I definitely could not have done this myself, but I hope that all the effort we put into it, all the late nights, all the sleepless nights have translated into a build that will have a presence in the LEGO community, will hold its own, and that a lot of people will remember as something special.